Recreation Commission meeting for July 23rd, and let's all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready? Pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Ms. McGill, will you call roll, please?
Chair Longstreet.
Here.
Brown. Here. Clark. Here. Heaton.
Here.
Uribe. And Commissioner Casebear, Wiscombe, and Intern Rodriguez are not present.
Well, and we move to an exciting item on the agenda. Welcome to our new Parks and Recreation Commission members. And Ms. Rapp, I'll let you do the honors on that.
Madam Chair and Commissioners, we're very pleased to have a full 7-person commission for the first time in a year. So we sincerely welcome our 2 newest commissioners. And now I'm going to draw a blank because I didn't write down Carolyn Brown. I got that one. I got stuck on Nicole's last name. Clark. See, she has 2 different last names. So I was like, no, that's not it. Nicole Clark. So we welcome both of them. They bring a very good background to the commission, representing different parts of the community, and their professional and avocational experiences, I think, will really benefit us as we go forward with our matters before the commission. So we thank you very much for serving, and don't hesitate to ask any questions. Welcome.
Yes, welcome to you both. Would either of you like to say anything at this point, or I don't want to put you on the spot, but if okay. Ready to go, and we're ready to have you. So thank you very much for joining us. It has been a little difficult the last year. We've been short a commission member almost the whole year, and we're really happy to have a full complement. So thank you. Changes to the agenda, Ms. Rapp.
There are none.
Okay. Written communications? Any written? We don't have any written communications this month? Okay, then we go to public comment. Any member of the public may address the commission for up to 2 minutes on any subject within the jurisdiction of the commission that is not scheduled for public discussion before the commission today. The total amount of time will be 15 minutes. And Mr. Gene, I always just think of you as Gene. Tyburn, welcome.
I'll tell it to you quick. I represent the Bank of America because they had a gardener prune their tree in front of the Bank of America, and that was a tree that grows 6 foot a year, Tipawanda-Taipu, and the gardener pruned it back too hard. And Mr. Downey doesn't like the shape of the tree, so he's had a meeting with the Bank of America and making out like they've been terrible people, and he's now made them hire a certified arborist to see that the pruning of the tree is done properly, and they've hired me to do that and write him a letter saying that it will be taken care of. And of course, the letter is never good enough for Mr. Downey. So I write him this letter, and I tell him what we're going to do and when I'm going to do it. And he then writes back a letter saying, oh, it's not good enough, telling us what you're going to do when the tree comes in. We need more details. As if, So it gets down to he wants me to tell him branch by branch what I'm going to prune when the tree grows in. The tree hasn't grown in yet, but he wants branch by branch identification so that it suits his needs. In other words, he's just trying to create hoops for Bank of America and me to jump through. He's harassed me for years. I've gone to court for him over 2 times because of harassment and won both cases. Somebody has to look into his behavior. We've had good people in this position of certified arborist, city arborist. They've been great. And now you have this guy. He writes back, the plan needs to have measurable dates and actions that will ensure the restoration of the tree. The plan specifically needs to identify when the tree will be trimmed and what needs to be done. We look forward to this process, and in conclusion, feel that if you want to contact Mr. Lemon, he makes this thought he's actually really interested, as if he were interested. I write back to him to satisfy Mr. Downey's request that we give him dates to the next work on the tree. TLC Tree Service will work on this tree next June 15th.
Mr. Tyburn, could you wrap up, please?
I'm trying to. Please.
No, you've got 2 minutes. We're going to get your memos.
This is too important for this. After it has grown in, after the tree grows in, I will then prune the tree according to the ISA standards. Should Mr. Downey or Mr. Lemon want to be there to observe the work, they can contact me and act as supervisors or even participate in the pruning of the tree if they so desire. That is not good enough for this man.
Okay, thank you very much.
No, hold it.
No.
This is ridiculous.
Thank you.
The younger people are all afraid of him, and you should be doing your job, getting him under control, harassing the public.
It's time to stop. We're going to get your memos. Thank you very much. Thank you tonight.
No, it's not good enough. It's not good enough.
It's what you're going to get tonight.
I know it. I know that's what I've always said.
I will adjourn the meeting.
You can adjourn the meeting. I came down here,
We're
I
adjourned.
drove down here, and all I get is 2 minutes. It's like a Nazi organization.
And that concludes public comment and brings us to the Youth Council report. I think we're...
Madam Chair, our youth intern is not able to be here today, and I don't believe that we have another representative from the Youth Council, so we'll defer until next month.
Okay, and now we're to Commissioner Committee assignment reports. For our new commissioners, everyone usually has some liaison positions, and this is an opportunity to report on those. I know that our new members have not had an opportunity to go to any meetings, but do you, Mr. Heaton, have a report this month?
Sure.
Good.
Thank you. Let's see. First of all, I did attend the Creeks Advisory Committee site visit this month. The regular scheduled meeting did not occur, but they actually had a site visit. It didn't have quorum, but it was a opportunity for the community to show up, and I thought staff did a really great job of listening to the community's comments and walking the site. It's a creek restoration on Las Positas Road at Las Positas Place, and they actually, before that, they had tabled and set up a table in the community and invited community input on the creek restoration project, which is, in the early stages of concept, looking at trail doubling as a flood 100-year flood control. So I thought it was really interesting and well done.
Oh, good.
I look forward to seeing that. They're looking at 2016-17 in all likelihood to see that project complete. So I think we'll have an opportunity to see it. And I did get to drop in on the Busy Girls Craft sale, and I thought that was a lot of fun. It was good to see all the crafts for sale, and I even found a couple little things myself. From Ashley and Sydney had a business that they called Bling, with some necklaces and bracelets. And Hannah had a business called Ding with some wind chimes. I found some good gift items there, and they even had little business cards. So it was really cool to see. Look forward to seeing that continue.
That's great. Thank you. Ms. Uribe?
This month I attended the Neighborhood Advisory Committee, and they received a presentation on the Eastside Transportation Management Plan, and they approved most of the staff recommended projects for the neighborhood enhancement projects, which had been a process that had taken a little while, with the exception of one project, and I don't have the list in front of me, unfortunately, right now.
Thank you. I attended the Park Foundation brief meeting yesterday. We're planning for the year ahead, looking at different fundraisers, and also planning for the 90-plus birthday party in the fall. So we will keep you all informed on when that happens so that you can mark your calendars and attend. Consent calendar. Did we have the summary of council actions? Does anyone have any questions on anything over
Chair
the
Longstreet, if we
Yes.
could go back to commission and staff communications, I did
Oh,
have
yeah.
a couple things.
Sorry.
First off, and I sent an email to the commission earlier, but I did want to share that Sarah Hanna, Recreation Programs Manager, has announced her retirement after 34 years serving with the City of Santa Barbara Parks and Recreation Department. So she will be missed and will be looking to fill that position going forward, but her last day will be September 5th, I think, that week. So we'll be putting some more information out on that, but I wanted to share that with you. It's a pretty significant member of our staff, and she'll be difficult to replace, and so we'll be moving forward. And the other thing that I asked Mr. Escobar to come and say a few words about the community cleanup day that's going to be taking place this weekend. Mr. Escobar?
Good afternoon. I'm Santos Escobar, Parks Manager. Thanks for having me this afternoon to discuss our 11th annual Looking Good Santa Barbara Community Volunteer Workday, which is going to be held this Saturday, July 26th. Currently, we have several hundred volunteers that are going to be assisting in a west side, east side cleanup. We'll be going through and doing litter pickup, graffiti removal, weeding, shining up garbage cans throughout the community. It's going to be something very exciting that we've had, like I said, for 11 straight years now, so it's all good. We'll be meeting at the Calvary Baptist Church at 736 West Isley Street for a beautiful Kiwanis pancake breakfast starting at 7:30, and then sign-ups will continue through that period up to 9 o'clock. Also, we'll be handing out some T-shirts as well for that particular work day, so it's all good. For the east side area, we'll be gathering at Ortega Park, and we'll be having also a workday at Ortega Park and also a lunch at Ortega Park after afternoon when all the work is completed and done. And I'd like to go through just thank a couple folks here. One is the Police Activity League, the Kiwanis Club, the Kind Bar, the UCSB Volleyball folks, the Santa Barbara High School football team. They'll be working with me on Mitchell Torrena underpass and at the corner of San Andreas. So I'm looking forward to meeting those young men. And this is a call out to Santa Barbara High School that you need to get involved in the future in these type of cleanups. And Girls Inc., New York, New Life Church, Marburg, Tri-County Produce, who's always there to help out with drinks and such at the Ortega Luncheon, so that's great. And then also Sundowner Sustainability Consulting. They played a big hand this past year for this particular cleanup, so look forward to seeing some commissioners out there if you can make it. So
I think you're laying down a challenge there.
I am. So I will be there and have a few staff folks there, so it's all good. So it's one of our work days that we do. You know, we do between 11 to 16 work days in our parks division, so it's all positive. So looking forward to getting some more community folks out there and that hand to provide that little TLC that is so needed in our city. So thank you.
Thank you. I know those days always make a difference in the neighborhoods, especially down around Parque de los Niños and the railroad tracks. It really makes a difference, so thank you. And I hope some commissioners can get out and help. I would just like to say how much Sarah Hanna will be missed. My oldest is 34, and I think that's when we started swimming, when he was 9 months old. And I've known Sarah ever since. I can remember spending many a summer day at swim lessons on the pool deck down at Los Baños. And, she's been a large feature in our department for many years and really important person. So she will be missed. But congratulations that she gets to retire. All right. Now we are to the approval of minutes. Our new commissioners, they can vote on the minutes. Okay. So Actually, I think Mr. Heaton and I were probably the only two in attendance. So
I'll move to approve the minutes.
I'll second that. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. No, you don't have to. You can approve the minutes. You can. You can all, everyone can vote on that one. So all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay. Passes unanimously. And then that brings us to trees. Mr. Downey?
You're going to break habits that I've created. Chair Wiscom here, but
Oh, you
Chair
can just call me Chair
Longstreet.
Wiscom. It's
Chair
fine.
Longstreet and Commissioners. The 1,300 and 1,400 blocks of Euclid Avenue is adjacent to Mission Creek. The City of Santa Barbara Creeks Division, in conjunction with County Flood Control, has done numerous projects to improve the habitat along Mission Creek in several areas. They're proposing a project along this section that is proposing to remove 13 non-native trees that are not doing so well in many circumstances, and fill in empty places and replace those trees with 40 native trees, some of which will be even larger than the existing trees and provide greater habitat to the wildlife and fish that go there, an enhanced buffer between the residents of Euclid and the freeway, and generally improve the look of the area. The Creeks Division staff brought this to the Street Tree Advisory Committee at their meeting in April as a concept to see what they felt about the project. The committee offered a number of comments, all positive, and supported the concept of these removals along with the additional trees. At their recent meeting at the beginning of this month, it was presented to them for action, and they reviewed the materials and a presentation and went out to the site, and they determined that this project would be a great benefit to the community. Their recommendation is to approve the removals on the condition that the proposed native trees are planted. In discussions with Creek staff, given our current drought situation, the project will be postponed until such time that the drought is over, to coincide with the city's plan to not plant trees during the drought. I have the Creek supervisor here, George Johnson, if you have questions about the project, but the committee unanimously voted to conditionally approve the removals. Chair Longstreet and Commissioners, see, I told you. We are asking for action on the decision today. It does not, the action doesn't expire, so that if the conditions change in the future and we're out of the drought, they can proceed with construction at that time.
Great. Thank you. That does clarify. Welcome. Do you have anything to add to this wonderful project?
No, I think Tim covered it. Thanks.
Okay,
If you guys
okay.
have any questions, I'm here to
And
answer.
we don't have any public comment on this, so are there any questions of staff?
I only have one question.
Okay. Push it down till you get a green light. There you go.
My only question is, since the end of the drought isn't in the foreseeable future, does community input, I know you had a meeting to see how the residents felt about the tree removal. Is that reconsidered, say it's 5 years from now, or not?
Commissioner Clark, I hope it's not 5 years, but if it would be 5 years, we would, if it was some length of time like that, we would probably go back to the community to see how they felt, just because, people move and things like
Right.
that. But we hope it'll just be a year or two, and so that's it. We are probably going to notify the community. They were expecting the project to go forward, so I will notify them and let them know that we are not going to be doing the project until the drought conditions improve.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Madam Chair and Commissioners, just this is really the first project that has come forward since we adopted our drought strategy. And, you know, I just want to share a little bit with you because this project is a difficult one for us because it's grant funded and we have the potential of losing the funds if we do not expend them. But we're talking about planting 40 trees, and that carries a burden to the community as well. So and I share that with you only because we know that there are a lot of other projects coming down the line. Public Works has some street improvements that they've got coming up. I think each of these different situations, we will have unique circumstances which come into play that need to be considered. We're trying to see if our grantor will work with us, but we may be at risk of losing the funds. And if so, we may have to have further discussions before we make a final decision. But for now, it's too early, and we're going to hold off as long as we can. So they are not going to be easy decisions coming along the way. So I just wanted to share that with you.
What is the timeline on this particular grant?
Well, we're supposed to spend the money by this fall. We're going to do the plantings in November, just to kind of take advantage of the winter months when it's less evaporation and hopefully some rain. And so we are going to request and see if we can delay that a year. There is a possibility of that, or we may use it on another project for some other work. So we'll see. We do have some funding to do some tree planting, and so hopefully we can get the project done eventually. It may be delayed a little bit to funding if we lose the grant.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions of staff? A motion? Someone like? Yes, Ms. Uribe.
I move that we conditionally approve the setback, the request for the 1300 block of Euclid Street for 13 various trees. And I don't know if I have to include the drought piece of it.
No, the 13 and 1400 block of Euclid. So we approve the recommendation conditionally on the plantings, right?
Yep.
That would be correct. I wanted to
There we
make
go.
sure that you got in the recommendation to plant
Approve.
with natives, 40.
Okay, is there a second? Second, Ms. Clark? Okay. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Okay, thank you. We look forward to that project. I know that street will benefit greatly by that attention, so thank you. And that brings us to our drought response status report.
I'll be giving the report. I'm going to see if I can actually move the keyboard up here. Be easier.
There you go.
Oops. Rid of that thing and do the slideshow for me. Great. Oh, that's not it. Yeah. Okay, Madam Chair and Commissioners, so tonight I will be giving you an update on the implementation of our strategic drought response. So it will include actions, things that have been accomplished, since we last presented this information to the Commission, which was the end of May. And I do want to note that I have several staff who have been very involved in the development of the plan as well as the implementation of the plan, and they're available to answer any questions that you have. And if you guys could just go ahead and have seats. So Rich Hanna, who's our senior recreation supervisor, who really worked on a lot of the aquatics, the pool facilities, shower locker facilities, parks manager Santos Escobar, and Mark Sewell, our business analyst, who worked with all the staff in the department and especially with the golf course. And Mark will answer any questions that you have about the golf course tonight. And I pulled out the wrong PowerPoint. So as I mentioned, since we presented our draft plan to the Commission at the end of May, we finalized the plan incorporating any comments that the Commission made to us at that time. And we presented the plan to the Water Commission on July 14th and City Council on July 15th. I will say it was very nice for staff because the report was very well received by the Water Commission. They appreciated the depth of the planning and as well as the accountability and the great thought that went into how we would accomplish the goal of having a 20% water savings overall. And they made some very good suggestions, so we'll be looking at those as we go forward. Similarly, the presentation to City Council, a lot of thoughtful deliberation following our report. I encouraged you to watch that so that you could get a sense of the council discussion. And today is just the first of several updates. I imagine that we would come back to you most likely in September. But if we have a need to come before you in August and update you on any particular changes or concerns that we have, we will do that. Otherwise, I would think that we will probably be here in September. So just as a quick overview to remind you, the plan is a working tool to guide staff in achieving the water conservation mandate. We have several areas within the department that are addressed separately in a comprehensive plan, including parks, sports fields, public landscaped areas, our trees, our recreation facilities, creek restoration areas, the golf course, as well as department-wide efforts. And the considerations that went into the plan were the short and long-term drought impacts, the protection of historic and other resources, and I would say that's where our focus is right now. That's really what we're looking at as we begin to see things drying out. How the public uses our parks and facilities, programmatic changes, as an example, the decision to close West Beach Wading Pool. Financial impacts, we'll probably have a better sense of that come September, both from the cost of water and any reduction in revenue that we're seeing from people reserving our parks or facilities, and also infrastructure modifications. And we're going to talk to you tonight about how far we've come since we talked to you in May. So we did not have this slide when we made our presentation to you in May, but we have included it with the presentation to the Water Commission as well as City Council. Thought it gave you a good overview of how Parks and Recreation water use is distributed. And 74% of all the water that we use is recycled, and 26% is potable. And of course, as you know, the recycled water plant is down for rehabilitation, and will be up again, we hope, by next summer. So for the purposes of this plan, we are treating all of the water as if it's potable, because that is what it is. It is potable. What we have to remember is that as soon as that recycled plant is up and operating, that 74% of the water that we use stops being a drain on city water users, available drinking water and water for residences, et cetera. So it's just really unfortunate timing. The rehabilitation of the tertiary treatment plant, the recycle plant, has been in the planning stages for years. It just coincided with this drought. So wanted to again highlight the biggest water user in parks is the turf. And so we have 3 classifications of water reduction. One is no change, and you have some pictures here reflecting that. These are pretty recent pictures. So Cabrillo Ball Field and Dwight Murphy Ball Field. The ball fields are prioritized because they are actively used as recreation areas, and to allow them to dry out creates safety factors for the people who are using those fields for sports activities. The majority of our parks, we're reducing the irrigation by 20 to 30%. And so you can see that these are 2 pictures, Shoreline Park as well as Mission Historic Park in the Rose Garden. And they actually look at times a little drier than this, and then we'll water and people will say, wow, it's looking pretty green. So, but that will be the cycle, and we'll expect to see that. And it's just managing that impact over time. And we have parks where we've turned off the turf irrigation. And so you'll see there pictures of Lower Orpit Park and Upper Orpit Park. And this is a good example of where we're not watering the turf, but we are watering the landscape beds, because there are a lot of historically important horticultural assets in those parks. And we turned off our 2 water fountains, the decorative water fountains at the Rose Garden, as well as Chase Pond Park expansion. This is the one at Chase Pond Park by the carousel. And we, although we don't have water in it, we did plant it with drought-tolerant plants, low water-using plants that give us, this is often a venue and a very photographic spot for all of our events. So this provides that interest, and yet it uses very little water for the effect. And we are seeing, as you drive around the community, a lot of our community trees, public and private, are showing the signs of being stressed from the drought. And so I've included a couple of pictures to show that to you, so you can see these are Brazilian peppers, and the tree on the right has some stress. Sorry, the tree on the left has some stress, but the tree on the right has even greater stress. And so we are monitoring all of these trees, and in some cases we'll be adding water to help trees survive the drought. And these are Canary Island pine trees that are very susceptible to drought. So we're seeing a lot of stress with these trees, and it makes them susceptible to disease and pest infestations, which is what's happening. And in this case, you'll see we have a dead tree. And so we are seeing more dead trees around the community. Since we implemented the plan, we have been able to put some improvements in the ground or in our facilities that help us save water. So since we last met with you at the Los Baños pool, we have moved forward with the purchase of an automatic backwash device at Los Baños. We're expecting that to arrive and be installed by mid-August. Los Baños is a year-round operation, so we expect that this will save us 63,000 gallons of water a year. So this will be ongoing once it's installed. And we have ordered pool covers for Ortega Park Pool, and that, when we get that, it's being constructed. It has to be designed very specifically for that shape of pool. We expect that that will offset 40% of the evaporation of pool water. So it will, even though Ortega Park Pool is a seasonal facility, it has water in it year round. So this will really help us. And just as a reminder, the Oak Park wading pool, we did receive an exemption because it is only operative with water in it for just a few months in the summer. So we received an exemption for having a pool cover. And we did close West Beach Wading Pool. I saw some of the media reports that left out the important information that it has a significant leak. And so the reason that it's closed is because it has a significant leak, and also because of the need to power wash that deck on a daily basis for health and safety codes because of the black night herons that roost in the adjacent trees. In our shower facilities, we have installed the bilingual signage asking people to limit their showers to 5 minutes. We have installed 38 lower flow shower heads. They will reduce the water used in those showers by 50%. And staff tell me that it really doesn't have much of a noticeable difference to the user. So we're hoping that that we will, and we have not really gotten complaints. We have deactivated 24 shower heads, 9 at the bathhouse. Shortly, we will be doing the ones at Muni within the next few days. And also the East Beach showers, we're deactivating. This is the outdoor beach showers. So deactivating the upper shower heads and leaving the foot showers. And just a couple of pictures to show you, in particular at Cabrillo Bathhouse on the left, we installed also a pull handle activation for those showers. So you have to hold it continuously to have the water come through the shower head. We have a real problem there with people who take very long showers, and so we're hoping that this will help people stay to the shorter shower limit. And on to the golf course, just a reminder that in a typical year when we have access to recycled water, the golf course uses very little potable water. The majority of the water used at the golf course is recycled, and only 10% of the water is used on the golf course itself for the greens, that very delicate area around each of the holes. And 2% of the water is used in the restaurant, the bathrooms, drinking fountain, things like that. And we prioritize the parts of the golf course which are most important to how golfers play the course. So all of the greens, the putting green, the practice and the teaching areas, all of those areas are a higher irrigation priority than the roughs and the non-playable areas. So as you're out on the golf course, you will see areas that are more green than others, and that is by design. We also have a lot of trees that we are now starting to do a little more deep watering because we don't want to lose those trees out at the golf course. And some quick pictures. This is the number 2 green and the area around it. The one on the left was taken at the end of May, And the one on the right was taken just within the last couple of weeks. Similarly, the number 10 green, and you can see that the area is drying out a little bit more, and here the green is in good shape, very playable. I just was talking to staff, and they were telling us that they were getting a lot of really nice feedback from the golfers about what good condition the greens are in, and they were so pleased. I think for the most part, golfers really understand the challenges that we are having with water in Santa Barbara. It is hard for us because not every community in Santa Barbara has the same water situation, and so we have a very competitive local golf market, and that makes it a little challenging for us, and I'll talk about that a little bit more. And this shows the number 18 hole after the last rain and what it looks like today. So this is a good indicator of the change in the golf course as we hold back on watering. And left of the 18 fairway, similarly the end of May and just within the last couple weeks. And we do want to continue to report to you on the financial concerns at the golf course. And as a reminder, this is the city's only municipal golf course. In fact, it's the only municipal golf course in the South Coast region. It is an enterprise fund, so it exists only on the revenue generated out at the golf course. It does not receive any tax support. As I mentioned, we have a very competitive local golf market, and I can say I was at an event last week out at Glen Annie, and it looks beautiful. And that's a challenge for us because they're one of our main competitors. We are still recovering from the construction and recession that happened 2009, 2010, and on. We are still not back to pre-2009 levels, which is a concern. Our reserves are below policy. We're still doing okay, but we don't have much wiggle room. In the last drought in the late 1980s, early 1990s, I think I got that right, we saw a 25% reduction in play that took several years to recover. As I mentioned to City Council, that was a different time. We still haven't recovered from the recession. So we are very concerned that if we continue to see a decline in play, that, it will be very difficult for us to get back. And so we are going to keep that issue in front of you because it has financial impacts for the golf course. I do have an update to this slide. We were, in fact, down $40,000 from projected in May and June. And May was when we started seeing more of the drying up of the course. When I made this presentation to City Council on July 15th, we were down 15% in play in the first 2 weeks of July. Well, we're doing a little better, and we're only down about 10%. So we're hoping that, and we're introducing a lot of new marketing efforts, targeted marketing efforts, and really trying to communicate to the golfers why the course looks the way it does and why we care. And so I think we're doing everything that we can to keep people playing the course. And we have a lot of people who are very loyal to the municipal golf course.
On that note, I remember years ago when the golf course was flush and our youth programming was not. We received assistance from the golf course. Is that possible to go the other way with council assisting the golf course, not in a loan package, but in an assistance for the drought?
Chair Longstreet and commissioners, I do think that that will end up having to be the discussion if we get to that point, because we don't want to lose our municipal golf course, so there has to be other answers out there. And in the longer term, we probably need to find something that is more of a sustainable model. We might have to look at different operating models, but I think we're dealing right now with the short term, and so I would expect that we would be putting together some financial projections, and we would be having those conversations. My guess is we probably would be having those in the fall when we really get a sense of how things are going and if we get fall rain. So yes, I would expect that that would be part of the discussion. So these slides may appear outdated. This shows information through the end of May, just shows you the progress within the department in saving water. My caveat is we have 107 different water meters, and they all get billed separately, and they arrive throughout the next month. And so we still have not received all of our June water bills. So we don't have firm numbers for June. All I will tell you is we are tracking very much the same. So the chart does show you that since the stage 2 drought was declared in February through the end of May, we reduced our water use compared to last year by 34%. Now, last year was a dry year, and so our water use was up. And so we really need to try and be, the goal for the city is to be at 20% of like a 5-year normal. So last year was high, this looks good, but we still need to see what we can do. So we expect that as the weather turns warmer and continues to be dry and warm, that we'll be in a position of using more water. So that's why we're watching it very carefully to look and see where are we needing to apply more water to not lose resources, so still working within our plan, but looking to see what our water use is. And very quickly, just showing how it's different between the different divisions. So parks was also 34%, and golf was 34%. And recreation was 27%. Now remember, recreation only is 4% of the water use in the department. Our two biggest users are parks and the golf course. So I think when we come to you in September, we'll have numbers that are more meaningful, and we'll look and see. I think we feel we're on the right track. I think also we are looking to see and carefully monitoring all of those different areas to see how much can we reduce the water use and still not have long-term impacts that we have to deal with. And that's, we will just keep massaging that as we go. And as I mentioned, we are, I think more of our conversations, particularly in parks and golf, is not about losing resources. And the challenge that we have is once the recycled water plant comes back on board, we will be able to use all the water we want, because otherwise it just flows out to the ocean. It can't be used for anything else. And we're not taking any water away from the potable water used in the city. And so, we're talking about a year, and we, have to be careful that we don't lose too much in this year that we really hurt our resources when the water comes back for us. And we're all praying for rain. And with that, staff and I are happy to answer any questions that you have, and we'll go from there.
Okay. Questions? Any?
Yeah, I had a question.
Okay. Ms. Clark?
Since the trees are really drought stressed, and it sounds like they're more at risk of being lost due to secondary stressors such as pests, is anything being done to address the secondary stressors to prevent loss and death? Is there anything being done to prevent secondary stressors to the trees that are drought stressed that we're at risk for losing, like for pine bark beetles?
In the drought plan, we identified 600 specific trees that are high-risk trees. We are actively monitoring those for pests and diseases that are secondary. The citizenry also reports when they see stuff, so we get out to look at those when we hear about those other trees that aren't specifically identified. And then another thing that we're doing, an example that we just completed, we just did 4,800 gallons of water in the parkways along East Anapamu. That's where we have room to water. So we're taking those kinds of actions for those important trees.
To follow up on Ms. Clark's question, though, do you think we'll see an increase in use of materials from the IPM, the yellows and maybe reds?
Material Laundry Commissioners, at this time, I don't see an increase in material so far. We'll be watching it
Okay.
and paying close attention to what needs to be done.
Okay, thank you.
Chair
Other questions?
Longstreet and Commissioners, I would say that at the golf course, we've had that conversation. And I've encouraged the golf superintendent that if using more materials that he wouldn't normally do helps him to maintain our greens and the important areas of the golf course during this drought time, that he should be looking at those. Now, typically, we invest the time and energy at looking at alternatives, but especially out at the golf course where, you know, a disease, a fungus, you can lose a green overnight. So, yes, we are, and staff knows that if they need to look at that, they need to act and act quickly.
Good, thank you. Ms. Brown?
For the golf course, are you guys finding that golf tournaments have decreased because of the drought? And because that's a good source of revenue, isn't it?
Chair Longstreet, boy, you're throwing me for a loop trying to remember the new chair and the new commissioners. Here you go. Chair Longstreet and Commissioner Brown, thank you for the question. It's a very good question. Actually, we saw a real decline in tournaments since the recession. Not necessarily the number of tournaments, but the number of players in tournaments. I think at one point we estimated they were down by 25% from what they used to be. And so people were choosing not to play in tournaments. So we are concerned about keeping the golf course competitive with tournaments, and so yes, we do know that that's a good way to go. However, we also try to balance that, because when you have a tournament, you're not open to your other players. So it's a delicate balance between the two. Thank you.
Mr. Heaton.
More comment. I just want to say I appreciate the level of depth and planning and strategic approach being taken on this. It shows some real foresight, and I think it's really going to go a long way to helping us preserve our assets. I I like the fountain planting. I thought that was kind of a cool approach. I think it'd be, if it hasn't already been done, it might also be helpful to include some signage, maybe not right where people want to take their pictures, but just kind of letting people know that that's what's happening, and the fountain will be back someday, but that would be a good opportunity for some outreach and education, since I think part of the purpose is to increase public's awareness. I think when you come back, it would be helpful, in a couple months, if that's when it comes back, to see what that 5-year normal is, and give us sort of a benchmark there. 34% on last year, already a dry year, that's significant. And I kind of echo some of what the council's comments were about, and where it seems like you're going is, we really appreciate the decrease, but we don't want to go too far, and knowing that we'll have recycled water back and other things, we don't want to take the risk at a loss that'll take longer to recover. So, but thank you for your efforts.
Ms. Uribe?
I want to thank you for the update as well, and I saw the meeting of the City Council for your recommendation, and so they had a lot of good thoughts, and I think they had Councilmember Hart had the same thought as you did about we don't want to lose a lot of our precious assets in terms of the trees. So that was a little bit of that discussion. But I do want to thank you for coming up with this. And the other thing for us to keep in mind is that when you come back in a couple of months, it will be that much harder for you to have maintained 20% because of all of that you have done already. So we understand that, and thanks for all those efforts.
Okay. The one thought I had when we were looking at the dying trees is, will the Street Tree Advisory Committee be reviewing those replantings for maybe being able to look at natives going in or drought tolerant kind of trees, as opposed to some that maybe were there in other times?
Chair Longstreet and Commissioners, the Street Tree Advisory Committee does take these things into consideration when we evaluate tree designations already. With the drought being so prevalent in everybody's mind, they haven't had much opportunity yet to look at designations since the drought's been declared, but I do anticipate that will weigh strongly on their decisions for future designations.
Thank you. I appreciate all the work that has gone into this, and I know the whole department has pulled together for it. And again, the trees are one of the bigger ones. On the golf course, those are safety plantings in many cases, and we can't afford to lose any of those. It's interesting to think of this in terms of hanging on for a year. But as I think it was Councilman White said, these are also people's are common areas. They're for everybody. And so, I think as a community, we really need to remember that we can afford to give up our lawn at our house so that we have a lawn somewhere where everybody can use it. So you're doing a good job picking and choosing, and those are all hard choices, and thank you for all your hard work. Okay, now we are on to the presentation on South Coast Task Force for Youth Gangs.
Madam Chair and Commissioners, it is my pleasure to introduce this item, and presenting it for you this evening is Saul Serrano with the Community Action Commission. I did want to provide a brief introduction. The task force has been in place since 2009. And it's been interesting for me because I have been involved with this since the very first meeting where we pulled all the key people from the major organizations and institutions within the city-county area to talk about the increase in youth violence and what more we could do. And it was out of that effort that we began to talk about the Pro-Youth Coalition that was created and was in place for many years after the last increase in youth violence. And then as the numbers started coming down, the funding went away. It wasn't as much of a priority. And it wasn't institutionalized. And then here we are again, and we have young people who are killed on our streets, and the community is coming together again to talk about what do we do. But at least this time, it was what can we do, and how do we institutionalize it? And so I'm pleased to tell you that I was involved from the very beginning, and then as the department started having to respond to the recession, I had to kind of pull out for a while. Assistant City Administrator Marcelo Lopez had the lead for being the staff liaison to the task force coordinator. And when he retired, City Administrator asked if I would take that on. So it's kind of coming back. And so I'm really pleased to be doing that. So I work pretty closely with Mr. Serrano. I felt that I think when we started the South Coast Task Force on Youth Gangs, we came and did a presentation to the commission about what we were doing and what it was going to look like and all of that. But we had not come back to the commission and talked about what we've been doing since then. And as you're listening to the report, it's important to remember that the Parks and Recreation Department is actually a key player in some of the programs and efforts that Mr. Serrano will talk about. The majority of what we do are on the prevention side. And this program is really primarily focused on intervention. There is a prevention element to it, but the focus has been on intervention. And we have been a key partner in both of those areas. So I wanted to, I invited Mr. Serrano to come and give you an overview and to answer any questions that you might have. Saul?
Thank you. Madam Chair, Commissioners, thank you for having us here today to share a little bit about the South Coast Task Force on Youth Gangs. Like Nancy was mentioning, we started in 2000. Actually, what prompted this was the increase in youth violence in 2007 with the stabbing of Luis Angeles Linares at Saks Fifth Avenue, followed by a number of youth-involved homicides and deaths. And it really brought the cities together. The city of Santa Barbara was in charge of convening the region. Because it wasn't just about City of Santa Barbara. It was also including Carpinteria, Goleta, and the unincorporated parts of the county as well. And so that brought the people together, and what they decided was programs come and go. There isn't one program that can solve it all, and that really people were in different directions. When people came together, they were sitting at the table, and people had heard about probation, but they didn't know who probation was. They knew about the law enforcement, but they didn't know who. Being in such a small community, people didn't have those working relationships. There was a lot of silos to break. And so that was the goal, is to coordinate and to break those silos down. And so with that, the mission, as the task force has continued to evolve, the mission is to eliminate gang activity, but also to improve safety in the community and improve the lives of families that are affected, as well as the community as a whole. The funders for the project are the partners, City of Carpinteria, City of Goleta, City of Santa Barbara, and the County of Santa Barbara. which pretty much funds the coordinator's position and some of the coordinating efforts associated with it. The task force is not a program, it's a coordination effort. And so, sometimes it's really, as we get going, it's a challenge to share exactly, the effect of it, because programs are the ones that do the work. And so we work with those programs that do the work. And I'll share a little bit about what that looks like. And so the way we're structured is there's a council that meets on a quarterly basis, and it's made up of elected officials, department executives, nonprofits, community representatives, school boards, law enforcement, parents and youth. And so that's the council, and it meets on a quarterly basis to receive updates, reports, and make decisions when needed. There's also a strategy team. When I came into the position of coordinator, the strategy team was also created, which is a smaller team, and it focuses on the guiding principles that we operate under. We have a set of principles that we follow. And so strategy team, they become my advisors. Nancy is part of that strategy team, and I'll share with the other members who they are. And that's more of a monthly kind of looking at where we're at and where we need to go a direction. And there's a service provider group that meets on a monthly basis, and we're, currently that wasn't this wasn't part of the structure. We've evolved into this, and so we're still actually creating this group. It's not a, defined group yet, and we're still in that process currently. And then coordinator who looks at the everyday work and communications with the council and everyone outside of the task force as well. So this is who composes the strategy team, which is Officer Adrian Gutierrez with the Santa Barbara Police Department, Dr. Jill Sharkey from UCSB, Fran Foreman from the Community Action Commission, Mark Alvarado from Neighborhood and Outreach Services of Park and Recreation, Mitch Torino with the Santa Barbara Unified School District, Nancy Rapp with Parks and Recreation, Sharon Berlardi, Carpenter Unified School District, Steve DeLera, County of Santa Barbara Probation, and Tracy Langwood with Community Action Commission. This is a team that meets on a monthly basis to look at the work and the direction of the task force. This is the group of service providers that we've convened or that have been willing to participate. In the past with the Pro Youth Coalition, there was funding connected to that. With this, we don't have any funding for programs. And so what has really brought these programs together is that as we've seen with the recession, and we're still feeling the effects of the recession, a lot of programs have actually closed doors in the community. And what we realize is that connecting and collaborating and also increasing that coordination can actually extend program resources and help separate organizations work together. This is not the end-all, be-all group. There's many more groups in the community which we still need to bring together. Because of the gang injunction, there have been some groups who have felt hesitant because the task force has not taken a stand or wouldn't take a stand. And so some groups have said, we won't work. Now that the verdict is out, maybe hopefully we'll be able to build those bridges with those organizations and have a larger group of service providers and move forward with this. So they include Offer One, Casa de la Raza, City of Carpinteria, CalGrip, Community Action Commission, CADA, Council on Alcoholism and Drug Abuse, Santa Barbara Police Activities League, the Parks and Rec Program, Santa Barbara Unified School District Programs, Santa Barbara County District Attorney's Truancy Program, the Santa Barbara County Probation, which they have a whole range of programs from Los Prietos Boys Camp to, we're acronym heavy, so that's Youth Offender Blocker, and I could go into details if you have questions later. Bridges to Recovery, which ended. Drama Kings is still there. The Alternative Report and Resource Center, which maybe I'll touch on later on. We just had them present at our last quarterly meeting on the ARRC. And the Workforce Investment Board and Youth Interactive. And there's a few others that have also come that are not here on the list, like Conflict Solution Center and a representative from the Pro-Youth Movement. So target population. So who we coordinate services around, who our focus has been on the families, but mainly the youth, but also their families. And these are juveniles who are involved with gang terms and conditions under probation. One of the things we realized is that the data from the police department was one, the data from the sheriff's department was one, the data from the school district was different, and the only real consistent data that we were able to really work with, look at, and explore was that of the probation department and the youth that have gone to court and have been found guilty of committing a crime in honor of a street gang, whether they were in a gang or whether they were not in a gang, but they participated in that crime. So we were able to work with them. In 2009, there was 306 youth in the South Coast with gang gang terms and conditions. 2013, there was 203 youth. And in 2013, there was 170 youth. So we've seen a decrease in the number of youth involved in the South Coast. Probation, as a result of this, they are at the lowest that they've been, I believe, in the past 30 years of youth on probation. So aside, there's the general population of youth on probation, and there's a youth specific to have gang terms and conditions connected to their probation commitment. And so the overall numbers have decreased, so have these numbers. The juvenile hall, I believe they're down to 50 youth in the juvenile hall. Los Prietos Boys Camp can house 90 youth, and they're down to 45 youth. They've closed one of their dorms because of the number decrease. One of the areas where this number has not decreased and it hasn't increased either is with the female population. So when we look at probation data, there's a very clear indicator that it hasn't increased, but the female population remains the same even throughout the efforts of coordination. And so that shows that, a lot of our programs, community programs, were focused on intervention efforts for young men, but we neglected to address the issue of young women. So our goal is just to eliminate gang activity, and some of the ways to do it is to, by monitoring the target population, providing services, coordinating around those services, the primary providers of intervention efforts, as well as prevention. As that number continues to decrease, our focus will shift to of a prevention, but not just general prevention, but a very strategic, coordinated prevention as to those that are closer to being part of that target population. Reduction in youth gang violence and the decrease in juvenile Part 1 and 2 crimes. There's a bunch of slides that I had, and I don't want to bore everybody with the slides and the graphs and everything, but there is, our goal is to decrease the number of youth crimes by 10% every year with the Part 1 crimes and the Part 2 crimes, and that's what we've seen that's manageable. We've actually exceeded that in some years, and that's why you see the decrease in the numbers. And then the prevention, a lot of the school district is responsible for the prevention piece. And so to do that, the school district has worked on decrease in expulsions and suspensions and an increase in school attendance and treatment programs. We know that if youth stay in school and they're successful in school, we've learned that through our CalGRIP programs, then they can actually stay away from the streets if they can be successful in school. And so for a lot of the programs, that's the target, is to really re-engage them in school. A number of years ago, 2012, there was a survey that was done to Los Prietos Boys Camp. 58 youth were surveyed and asked, what can leaders in the community do to help you step out of gangs? 1/3 said, there's nothing you could do. 1/3 said, you could just stop us. And then 1/3 said, we need better opportunities in school and with jobs. And it was very interesting to find out that for a lot of them, they didn't have that opportunity in schools, because for a lot of the schools, there was a push out. And so the Santa Barbara School District has actually, acknowledged this, and they've now put into practice restorative justice practice, or a restorative approach. It started as a Santa Barbara junior high model, moved to all the junior highs in the high school. Now, this upcoming year, it'll be all high schools, all junior highs, and 3 elementaries in the South Coast.
Thank you, because I worked in the schools for 18 years in elementary, and the fact that we don't have a truancy program in elementary school is horrible, because that's where it starts. I mean, a small child that doesn't learn to read is not going to be a successful junior high or high school student. So
Right.
I think that the real key is supporting those families who have trouble getting those kids to school, and I think a lot of times you find very young parents, and I appreciate that you're looking down at the level of elementary school.
Yeah, so the school district's doing good work in that area. There's also the truancy program, who's also working with the school districts to eliminate truancy. And there's a group of parents with the parent support groups for parents to have youth with gang terms and conditions. There's 30 parents that Community Action Commission worked with. I met with some of those parents and, addressing truancy, and they mentioned, when did the problem start? Did it start now? And I said, well, no, it started in elementary. Well, why, how did it start? Well, my kid didn't want to go to school. They were little. I let them stay home. And it became a trend. And so, it goes on to show that, So one of the things, and I'm jumping the gun or going around here, but the Santa Barbara Police Department actually will be doing a new project called GREAT, which is a gang reduction. And it's federal money being given to the police department to have an officer do prevention, a gang prevention curriculum. It's evidence-based, and it'll be at the elementary level for 3rd and 4th graders. It is a very short curriculum, but the majority of the piece is for parenting. And so the officer will also be working with parents in the elementary, that the elementaries identify as a prevention piece. Maybe they have a sibling that's involved, that's been involved in the juvenile system. Maybe there's signs of behavior already. I've gotten calls from principals saying, you know, we have a group of kids who are acting up. They're writing East Side, West Side on all their stuff. They're showing the signs. They're going to be that population in the future. Let's work with them now. And so then we can direct our resources to that. So with that, one of the challenges we've also had is that a lot of youth involved in our target population go to many programs, and for a lot of the programs don't know which programs they're participating in. They know they could come to their program, but they don't know across programs. Some of that is because of privacy laws and not being able to share information. And so we've done some work, and we're still continuing to do that. So some of the strategies that we've used for intervention are case management services, individualized client-specific and family-specific services versus a one-size-fits-all type of model that was used in the past, and also using evidence-based practices that are effective and we can prove we actually document their success. And I'll talk a little bit more when we get to our CalGRIP section. Providing parent support, we know that working with the youth is not enough, that we need to also work with the parents either at the intervention level or at the prevention level. Restorative justice practices in the schools to keep kids in schools. There's actually a very large mandate from the feds and the state for probation to decrease their numbers and keep kids out of the juvenile justice system, because they know once they enter that system, it's going to be very hard for them to get out. And at the same time for the schools to keep kids in school versus allow them to enter the juvenile justice system. And so there's a lot of work that's being done with the probation department and our school districts to make that work smoothly, and so we don't lose youth. And some of that involves cross-agency data sharing. So that's more or less the task force. I'm going to go into some specifics that we started in 2013, and that is emphasis on target population with the Santa Barbara Unified School District. When this task force was being developed, the school district hired an outreach coordinator to work with youth at many of the schools that were involved, and that actually grew beyond what their expectations, and they hired Ismael Huerta to work with youth in the school districts. Well, Ismael realized, I need a female counterpart because there's a lot of young females that need also somebody to work with them, and so they hired a female outreach worker, Melissa Garcia. Casa de la Raza and Probation did a partnership for their Mariposa program, which is specific for young women, rites of passage type of program. And then CAC Las Comadres, case management and mentoring, also for the target population. And the probation department in South County, for North County and Santa Maria, they have one specific officer that focuses on all their female caseload. In South County, there's one, but she's not only seeing females, but majority of the females in South County. So there's still work to get one specific probation officer in South County. Then there was a development of the Quetzal Academies, prompted by the closing of El Puente School, where a lot of the target population attended. And so when that happened, the school, for the task force, our concern was, where are these youth going to go to school if they're expelled, they've been suspended, they can't go back to the district school? So we met with Dr. Cash and said, the County Office of Education from El Puente was utilizing these community schools. And Dr. Cash said, well, we're trying to write an exemption with the state so we could have expelled youth in our campus. That could take a year or more time. We said, well, if you want these sites. And so La Cuesta, the principal of La Cuesta took this on, the school district took this on, and they developed these Quetzal Academies, which are community schools. Initially there was 4, now there's 3. They combined one, the Galita one, with the Colina Junior High. And so there's now a site at Casa de la Raza, La Colina Junior High, and Westside Neighborhood Center. And these are schools that can accommodate expelled youth in an independent study type of program. But they're also accredited, ACE accredited, which they can, I forget if that's the acronym, but they can transfer directly from those schools to a college if they would like in the future. And so this is the first year that we've had them in this past year. I actually met the Casa de la Raza teacher at the site teacher at the end of the school year, and I believe 12 of her seniors that returned to the school district, 11 of them were able to graduate. They were able to become credit compliant and graduate from high school. So it's nice to see that those youth were not lost. Early intervention pilot project, referrals to teen court directly from law enforcement. So law enforcement can refer directly to teen court to intervene. Instead of having to wait for the probation department to receive the referral, assign a court date for the youth to go to court. For a lot of these youth, when they're being, they might start hanging out in the street, being truant, and might experiment with some substances. Now the law enforcement can directly refer kids to a teen court if they complete their program. Then it doesn't have to go through the probation system, and so that's one other additional way of yes. Mm-hmm.
For the teen court, is that through the city, or is it also with the CADA
Great
teen
question.
court program?
It's the CADA Teen Court, and it's actually an MOU with all agencies in the county. So it involves the sheriff and the Santa Barbara Police Department. And so any of those agencies, if they see a young person who's beginning to first-time offender and there's a drug offense related, they can refer directly to teen court instead of making the referral to the probation department. Restorative justice at Santa Barbara School District, as I mentioned, the expansion of that. Data sharing, this has been our challenge, and really getting agencies to be able to communicate and share data. And so we've actually started the project, and it started with the strategy team, really working with Mitch Torino from the school district and Steve DeLeo from probation. And so at the moment, the Santa Barbara School District and the county probation are sharing data, and the goal is to once we figured out how to make it run smooth, then to bring other agencies and add more agencies. The long-term goal is to establish a real-time database that can really grab the data in real time. But that's costly, and it's really difficult of maintaining the security of the information for privacy reasons. And so we're still working towards this. We've also joined the California 13 Cities Gang Prevention and Intervention Network, which is a network of other cities doing similar work that have a task force that includes City of San Jose, Long Beach, LA, San Diego, Fresno, Salinas, so other cities. So we have once a year in-person meeting, and then followed by bi-monthly phone calls. And we share information on efforts that are being in our area. We submit a report of the work that we do here, whether interventions or programs or updates, and then you build on the strengths from other cities. We're very different because we already partner between 3 cities and a county. For a lot of them, it's their own city, and it's just within their city. When we visit City of LA, their county and their city agencies don't work together, because they're city and because they're county. For us, it's one and the same. And so we're very fortunate to be able to have that kind of collaboration. So when we approached the network and we said, we have a collaboration of 3 cities, they're like, what do you mean? It's not just one city? I said, no, that we can work, 3 cities can work together versus just one individual city, which is, they were impressed. And one of the people that works with that, he also works for the feds. He's been working, 30 years, 40 years plus. And he said he's never seen that kind of model throughout the U.S. So we're very unique in our model and our approach in our region here. As of last year, there was a lot of programs that ended, and so 3 cities in the area, one that's not in the South Coast is Lompoc, but the 3 cities applied for state funding, CalGRIP. These are California Gang Reduction and Intervention and Prevention Programs. Carpinteria applied for a prevention model. Lompoc applied for a youth employment model. And Santa Barbara, which is regional and it's not just city specific, applied for a intervention model. And all 3 cities were awarded $500,000 for 2 years programs. The budget for the state is $9.5 million. LA automatically gets $1 million, and so that leaves $8.5 million. And our area got $1.5 million out of the state. We were able to secure that, and so a lot of it was through the coordination. The state was impressed, and we didn't think we were going to get any of them because in the year before, City of Santa Barbara applied and it was denied. And so when we submitted all these proposals, we made sure that we were not going to cancel each other out, and that we're actually building and had a strong individual but regional approach. And they were also impressed. They were like, we haven't seen this either. When I talked with the person who does my work in City of Salinas, they have a 4 cities network. They didn't receive funding, and they tried to do a similar approach. And so it was interesting to learn that we were able to apply for this funding and receive it, because of the connection and collaboration that's happened in the region. Last year, we did a second annual Service Provider Summit on Monday, July 29th, and Officer Agent Gutierrez was our lunchtime speaker. And he was actually, we brought author Luis Rodriguez, and we also brought a speaker to talk about human trafficking, because in just like in our area, but in other areas, the gangs are moving towards the direction of human trafficking and prostitution of minors. And so we brought a speaker to address that. And from then till now, the district attorney in our region has started a human trafficking task force. For a lot of people, it was like, what does that have to do? But we know what's coming ahead. But actually, Adrian was the star of the show. He was able to talk about law enforcement and really about his experience growing up here, what it's like to be law enforcement, and the work that he's done in the community. I think everybody there was very impressed with hearing him. I believe it was his first time talking in a group that size. He said he didn't want to do it, but he did it. We made him do it, and he was great. 200 participants, 4 breakout sessions, 3 keynote speakers, and we also had a foundation panel. And even with the foundation panel, when I was walking them to the stage to sit down, there was one person who was introducing herself to the other members of the panel, because even in that small of community, they didn't know each other. And that day, there was a lot of that going on. It was really to bring providers together, for them to get to know each other, to get outside their agency, to get outside of their programs and meet others and work with others. And that is some of the work. I know it's a lot and it can be very confusing. I see it every day. It took me a while to understand all this. And so if there's questions, we'll be glad to take them now.
One additional comment that I would like to make, Commissioners, before we go to questions is the strategy team has identified the need to take a discussion to the council, which is, since we are seeing numbers come down of youth with gang terms and conditions, we know from experience what goes down eventually goes back up, and this is where the whole topic of institutionalized comes into play. And so the conversation that we want the council to have is, what do we do now? And where do we redirect those resources? How do we maintain the focus? Because that's what we envision, is that it shifts a little bit more to prevention, and then when needed, shifts back to intervention. So we need to have that conversation, because it is at this point when most community efforts fall apart. And so that's exactly where we see ourselves right now, is in that, when it's not a problem anymore, people want to move the money to something else. And we need to be involved in the discussion of where do the resources shift to. So, and with that, open to questions.
Thank you for an uplifting presentation is what I would say. There's nothing better than to hear that you're being so successful. And I agree with you, Ms. Rapp. This is kind of a critical time. But the other part of it, I think the beauty of the model that you have is that you have just a coordinator. It's all of the agencies need to keep doing what they're doing. You've established that. It's not like you've set up this big institution that requires a lot to keep it going. I think you've set up an excellent model. So to that, we'll go with questions. Let's start with Ms. Brown this time. Do you have some questions or comments?
Well, I don't really have any questions. I run the Boys and Girls Club of Santa Barbara, and I've actually sat in on a couple of your sessions over the past 6-7 years. And I'm just thrilled by the drop in numbers. And I know we work a lot on the prevention side, but the intervention side is so important. And to see all these organizations and the school district coming together is like nothing I've seen since I've been here working with the kids. And so I just applaud you and everybody that you're working with, because you really have some measurable outcomes, and that's what people want to see. So that's fabulous. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah,
Ms. Uribe.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the presentation. And thank you for the work that you're doing. You have a great responsibility to the community in a way for both the prevention and intervention. One thing that I think would be useful would be to put a lot of the positive data out in the community and put it out through a lot of the media, and whether that's through events or whatnot, because a lot of times what we hear is we only hear about gangs in the negative sense. And that's usually what's on the minds of people. And so if we can put this positive information out there, I think we'll be able to turn a lot of the dialogue.
Right. Well, I did want to mention that's been one of the challenges is to really, one, to let the general public know of the work and the success. And second is to have more positive media coverage versus negative media coverage. And so now part of the challenge in all this has also been keeping the council together, keeping the members involved, keeping everybody engaged, because that's been part of the challenge as well. That's the hard part for a lot of people. We've been at this for a while. We want to see more results, more faster, and it's like it takes time. But a lot of it is also relationships. So we've taken time to build relationships with the community, and so now I think we'll be able to move beyond that and maybe share with the public where we're at and where we're going. Because now we got to recalibrate. Where do we go from this? Where do we go from here? Now that those numbers are in a downward trend, how do we keep it that way, and where do we go? So that'll be our work coming up in the near future.
Mm-hmm. And thank you for that. And also like to echo Ms. Rapp's comments about our commitment of resources and focus, both on the commission level and as a city. Secondly, I would recommend, or I would just put out there, collaborating with Ms. Choi at the Academy for the Quetzal program, because I know that was a very impactful program with a lot of successes. And the Quetzal program, it was new to me, so I hadn't heard about it. Lastly, I thought it was a really good show presentation, and I was wondering if perhaps the commission could get a copy of it, and you can leave in the fun statistics.
The other one. Yeah,
because I thought that would actually be interesting for us.
Yeah, so you get this one, I'll send like our generic one with all the other numbers. And we also, one of the other things we do is we do a monthly newsletter with some of the other stuff and between the meetings. The work happens in between the meetings, even though our quarterly meetings is when we report out. And so if you're interested, welcome to, let Nancy know, and we'll add you to the recipients of those newsletters as well.
Excellent, thank you.
And we have a web page with all our back meeting information.
Thank you. That's it for me.
Mr. Heaton, do you have any? No.
Thank you.
Ms. Clark? No. Well, thank you very much. I think it is always difficult when you're working in the nonprofit realm to keep the funding coming in when there's a new cause around, or, it's not in the newspaper. And, our kids are important all the time, and it takes a lot of work to get them started well. So I appreciate everything that you're doing. And the focus on family is, we can't just punish or treat kids. It's an entire family that has to come together. So thank you very, very much.
Welcome. And if I could add one last thing, I know Nancy probably wants to add something else, and I didn't go into detail, but maybe we should, is the collaboration with Parks and Rec and some of the programs. So for the city of Santa Barbara, the CalGrip, part of that is the youth apprenticeship program and funding of that program, which has been huge for the CalGrip, this target population, to be able to access jobs. And so that partnering is we're looking forward. What I'm hoping is that in future quarterly council meetings, that we're able to bring some of those youth from the apprenticeship program to share with the council how they've benefited from their work and where they're at now because of that piece.
Excellent. Thank you.
Madam Chair and Commissioners, that is actually what I was going to mention, and I was going to add a piece to it, and that is that Mark Alvarado made a comment to me that and this is just a reflection of how the networking of agencies and connecting people where you see the holes. So Mark at the West Side Neighborhood Center has the Quetzal Academy there, and he sees those youth, many of whom would like jobs, and we have the funding through the CalGRIP to do some youth employment jobs, but it can't meet the needs of all of those students. So when we got the additional $25,000 from, no, I'm sorry, it was more than that, but we got the money for an additional 25 youth to be employed through the Youth Apprentice Program. Our priority was for placing kids who are in the Quetzal Academy into those jobs, because we really see the need to help those kids who are most at risk or at the greatest opportunity to turn the corner. And that's really how we like to look at it. They're at the greatest opportunity to make better decisions for their life. And so many of those kids have been targeted by Mark Alvarado for the Youth Employment Program.
Excellent. Yeah, Ms. Brown?
Do you ever work with WIB? You have, because that's another funding source, and they do target a lot of those kids. So, yeah. Okay.
Thank you very much. That was a very enlightening and uplifting presentation. And I wasn't sure it was going to be after the drought. I thought drought and gangs, and that was wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We appreciate all the work you're doing just behind the scenes that nobody's really seeing much of. So thank you very much. And thank you, Ms. Rapp, for taking on the coordination through the city, because I know you already have a very full plate, and I appreciate that you've taken that on. So that brings us to our annual advisory committee reports. For our new members, every year we get these series of reports. We don't do too much with them. They're for our information, but if you have any questions or anything about that, please feel free to ask those now. Ms. Rapp can probably answer any of and all of them. And it also, by reading through those, it gives you an idea of the different groups we have that we're liaison to that come under Parks and Recreation. So, any questions? Okay. Well, that...
One additional thing that I would just make that's not related to the reports, but is related to the advisory committees. So at your August meeting, we'll be revisiting, because we have 2 new commissioners, we'll be revisiting the commission liaisons to the different advisory committees. So be thinking about whether if you're already a liaison and you have a need to change or a desire to change, and if you're new, then be looking at schedules to see which ones do work with your schedule, and so that we're ready for that discussion come August.
And, feel free to contact any of us that if you see we're a liaison to it and have been for a while and you want to ask what it entails or whatever, please feel free to contact us. We have no old business and we have no new business, so that brings us to adjournment, and this meeting is adjourned. You all survived your first meeting. Both of you survived.